So let's see how we can turn this to this. So if you've ever wanted some more trunk space in the limited edition, or you have installed your own subwoofer, because let's be honest, the subwoofer that comes with the Ioniq limited edition is not that great. They put it under a sound dampening pad here, so that makes it even worse. It's possible to fix it. Some might wonder whether they should get like the standard or the SEL edition rather than the limited for the extra trunk space, but there's a lot of other features like the sunroof. So in my mind, it doesn't really make sense to compromise on all of those other features just for a one questionable design decision on the limited. And it's actually possible to fix it without having to downgrade versions. So let's get into it. Before we begin, we have to get down to the subwoofer itself. It's fairly easy. You just pull up on this pad here. It's not attached in any way. And then you have access to everything underneath it. So first you have to remove this piece right here, and it's just held in by these little clips here that are socketed in here, and then one over here. And you just pull these out with some small prying tool. Then on both sides, just pull up. I've already gotten that one off. Just pull up. It's held on by these green things right here that are similar shape to the ones before. So you want to pull up in these areas right here. And then you have this little cable right here that goes to the subwoofer you need to unplug by just pressing down your finger on this little piece right here and pulling. And now the subwoofer is disconnected. And then you have these four little nuts on these screws that need to come off with a 10mm socket. And now you just lift this out. It's not very heavy. Has that small speaker. Obviously not very high quality. And to put this back on, you just plop it back down over the latch. Push the four pieces of plastic back into place. Then you need to put these little plastic pieces back in. You have to make sure that the end cap is up. If you have it pushed down, then that's going to extend these little claws and you're not going to be able to fit it all the way through. So you need to pull out that tab so that it's sticking out like this before you plug it back in. And once you plug it in, you push this button back down. So with the subwoofer removed, you still have one problem. And that is if you put the padding back down, it still has this giant bulge where the subwoofer was. So you haven't gained any space since this is still here. You can just remove it completely and deal with the ugly bare metal finish at the bottom. But one thing this pad also serves as, if you see all this foam here, is sound isolation. If you don't have this here, then while you're driving, you're going to hear a whining noise from this motor back here. You can make your own padding to cover this, but since this subwoofer is only in the limited edition versions, you can also just go out and buy the non-limited trunk mat, like right here. And it'll be a tight fit because we still have this little lip here from the subwoofer. But now you have that sound isolation and you still have a proper storage space without this giant little block here in the middle. So you can get the non-limited edition trunk mat from online retailers. The issue I ran into is that through all the ones I tried, none of them had it in stock, or it was on back order, and then the one that was on back order, I think it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they still couldn't get it to me. So I went down to my local Hyundai dealer, and they put in the order, and it was here 2 days later. So I'd recommend just going to your local dealer. It does cost $400, so it's not cheap, but I buy into the philosophy of do it right or not at all. So I would prefer something that doesn't look like it's duct tape and hacked together every time I go open my trunk. The part number for this will be in the description, but be aware that this part number is for the black interior. I'll try to add part numbers for other color interiors as well, but if you have a different color interior, you're going to need to make sure you have the right part for that color of interior. There's one further tiny small problem with that, and I don't know if this is capturing well on camera, but this isn't completely flat. There's sort of a bounce to it, and it's because of these screws right here from the subwoofer. If you look at the side where their motor is that has those same like sort of protruding screws, you'll see that it has these little cutouts here for those screws. You would just need to add those cutouts to the side where the subwoofer screws are sticking out so that you don't have that bulge. Even with the little holes dug out on the other side of the pad so that there's not foam being pushed upwards when the screw comes in, you're still going to have a little bump here because the screws are just longer than the distance between the pad and the floor. You can just completely cut off the bolts at the bottom. That will ensure that you'll never be able to mount the subwoofer again. And maybe you're okay with that, but some reasons why you might not want to do that is it hurts the car's resale value. And if you've ever purchased like a used product before, whether it's a used book that someone's written their name in, a used car that someone has just broken some piece that's you can't really fix, it's just a pain in the rear to deal with something that someone else has just haphazardly broken. And it's possible to resolve this without going gorilla on it. So what you can do instead is there's extra thread on the bolts that hold the subwoofer in, about 1/2 centimeter. If you cut off 1/2 centimeter of the thread, then they won't poke through the top of the pad anymore, and you'll still be able to mount the subwoofer to the bottom if you choose to in the future or when you go to sell it. That way you're not permanently damaging the car. One more thing, if you decide to cut the bolts for the subwoofer, I would recommend using bolt cutters rather than an angle grinder. One, if you have neither, the bolt cutters are cheaper, about $30 probably, maybe even cheaper from Harbor Freight. Two, the angle grinder is going to have sparks go everywhere, and the back of the seats, the pad, they're kind of all flammable. Also, regardless of how you cut the bolts, make sure that the cut is flat. If you do it in an angle, you won't be able to put the nuts back on. And even though the bolts are still there, you won't be able to attach the subwoofer again. And in the end, storage as it should have always been on the limited edition Ioniq 5.